Okay, we got the long-awaited CPI numbers, and they came in, well, a little bit better than expected. The market expected 2.8%. We got 2.7% on CPI. On core CPI, we got a little bit more than we actually expected, 3.1 over 3. And so now what's happening is Powell's got absolutely no excuse for not reducing rates in the next FOMC meeting in September, because you got the job numbers which were revised, and they were much worse than expected. And now you've got CPI, which was, you could say, a little bit better than expected. So Powell's got no choice but to actually start reducing rates in September. And you can see that the markets are celebrating. Well, I don't know, the Bitcoin price isn't really celebrating, but the ETH price is celebrating back at $4,420. And that's just a sign that it's ETH season, and there's nothing else that you can do about it. It is ETH season, right? And you can see that all the ETH-related coins are flying. Look at Lido, 154. I saw Athena was at 83 cents, pretty much getting to new highs. But the one chart that I do want to talk about, because I think it's an important chart to talk about, is this chart over here. Because, look, I know everyone that's holding ETH is celebrating, but if you're holding Solana, and I know a lot of us are holding Solana. I'm holding a big bag of Solana. I know you're holding a big bag of Solana. This is not a very, very, very pleasant chart. I think we need to talk about whether it's time to exit some Solana positions. We'll talk about that. We'll actually look at the data, and we'll talk about the CPI, and we'll talk about everything else that's happening in the market. So happy CPI day to those who celebrate. Let's go. Let me know in the chat if you celebrate CPI Day. I mean, happy CPI Day if you do, but let me know in the chat if you're one of the people that is actually celebrating CPI. I guess if you're celebrating CPI, it means that you're holding ETH or ETH-related altcoins, because Bitcoin ain't moving, because it's not Bitcoin season anymore, and that's what we just have to face. What we need to do, my mom's celebrating. I see someone saying my mom's celebrating. How many of your moms are celebrating CPI Day? I know Sheldon's mom celebrates the shit because she's a trader. He's crazy. She's a crazy trader. I wish I could trade as well as she did. Anyway, guys, let's talk about what's happening on the markets. Remember, all I need you guys to do is obliterate the like button. I'll do everything else. I'll do everything. I'll bring you a show. I'll show you everything about Solana. I'll give you alpha. All you need to do is, like, simple. Sit on your sofa, chill, get a drink, and smash the like button. That's all you have to do. Anyway, let's not waste time, because there's lots to talk about today. I want to talk about what's happening in the market. As I said, ETH is celebrating, right? Like, anyone that's basically holding ETH is really celebrating. Sol, guys, guys, who's holding Sol? Let me know in the chat if you are actually holding Sol. But the one thing we know for sure right now is that it is ETH season, and everybody that's holding ETH is celebrating the CPI results today. And the reason why they're celebrating is because, look, the last CPI results were 2.7%. We forecast 2.8%. We got 2.7%, which means that there is absolutely nothing that Powell can say now that is going to make him hold interest rates. In the last Fed meeting, you had two of his Fed members dissent. You had one person actually resign from the Fed Board of Governors, maybe because of that, maybe not. But right now, I didn't refresh this because I specifically wanted to refresh this with you guys. This is the chart of the rate cut probabilities. I'm going to smash it here, and let's see if anything changed. I didn't actually change it. Let's see. At 94 there we go. So 94.1% that there is going to be a rate cut. And now the market is now forecasting 1, 2, 3 rate cuts this year, and 1 more rate cut in April next year. So that's basically what the market is now forecasting. I guess that now all eyes are on Powell. It's like almost like you want to say, Powell, over to you, sir. Now you have to start cutting interest rates. There's not very much else to it. The jobs numbers, after they were revised, were poor. The inflation numbers are not hot anymore. Trueflation is telling us that inflation is at like 1.7%. I mean, Powell has to cut now. So all eyes on Powell. And I don't think that actually when he cuts, the market will celebrate, because I think everyone kind of knows. 94.1% of people actually know that Powell's going to be, that Powell's actually going to be celebrating. Not celebrating, he's going to be cutting. And then we're going to be celebrating. Specifically, if you're holding ETH, you're going to be celebrating, because listen, guys, I mean, say what you want. It is ETH season, and there's nothing that you can do or say to change that, right? You can see it when you look at the chart against Bitcoin. It's playing out in this pattern exactly as we predicted. It's going to go up here, maybe a little bit of sideways movement, and then maybe even go up towards the edge of this channel. One thing I can see now when it comes to ETH is that there is an insatiable demand for ETH. It's crazy what's going on with ETH. It is absolutely crazy. Yesterday, ETH had a $1 billion inflow into the ETFs. $1 billion flowed into the ETFs yesterday. Also, yesterday, Tommy Lee and Bitmine Emergence, they now hold 1.2 million ETH. I think they're like the first entity or the first public entity to hold 1 million ETH. And it's not over. It's not over. So not only does he own 1 million ETH, but if you look at the net issuance of ETH, so if you look at like the total number of ETH minted after the merge, after subtracting the ETH that were burnt, right? The total net emissions of ETH were 451,000 ETH. And the inflows into the ETFs today were half that. So in a single day, the ETH ETFs bought over 50% of the net issued ETH, which is like, that's a massive number. The more exciting part is that Bitmine, which is Tommy Lee's company, just filed a prospectus to raise up to $20 billion more to actually purchase ETH, which is amazing for ETH. Like the momentum that ETH has got, I mean, to watch the timeline is absolutely amazing. And to see the fact that we actually caught the majority of the move, we got the ETH deltas, we got Lido, we got ETH itself. I think we got Athena. Most of us, specifically the guys in front runners, definitely got Athena. It's amazing to see, right? Only thing is, I know that you know that I know that you know that we're both holding ETH, both holding Sol, right? And when ETH has momentum, the one thing that is not so cool is when you look at the Sol ETH chart, and it's basically a down only chart. This Sol ETH chart is a very sad, a very sad looking chart, right? I mean, I want to talk about this because I do know that we're all holding Sol, and I think that the big question now is, do we abandon the Sol ship and go into ETH, or do we stay in Sol and basically watch this thing carry on bleeding? Because that's exactly what's happening. It's just bleeding. And I mean, the question is, do we want to just hold on to this asset, or should we jump ship now and move from ETH to Sol, right? And that's really what I want to break down in the next part of the show. Let me know in the chat if you guys are actually holding Sol. And let me know if you intend to hold it or intend to sell it. I'll show you exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to show you exactly why I'm doing it. So the first thing that I want to talk about when we talk about the Sol ETH chart is, I think people have a very short memory, right? I agree that Sol ETH is not a very good looking chart at the moment. I mean, you don't need to be a chartist to do that, right? So you don't have to be a chartist to understand that right now this chart is down only. And in fact, like I love doing this when I'm looking at charts. I just invert the scale, right? And then you're like, whoa, that's like an unbelievable recovery. But the only thing is, because I inverted the chart here, it's actually not a recovery. It's actually an unrecovery. It's a breakdown, right? So I think we need to get some perspective here. Let's just get some perspective here. The first part of the perspective is, if we look at ETH and we look at Sol, and we look at ETH and Sol since the beginning of the cycle, or since the lows of the previous cycle, right? And I'm going to mark the chart over here because you could kind of say that that's where the current bull market actually began. And we look at the returns that Sol has already given in the cycle. Sol has given a 2,000% return in the cycle, right? If I look at ETH for the same cycle, right? ETH has given a 391% return. So what a lot of people are not really factoring is, already Sol this cycle has returned 5 or 6 times more than ETH has actually returned in the cycle. Now, of course, true that right now, so the ETH has been outperforming. And in fact, if anybody bought Sol anytime after July 24, which is almost a year ago, so a year and a bit ago, then you're currently on break even on your investment, right? So it basically means that in the beginning part of the cycle, Sol outperformed ETH. It actually outperformed ETH up until April 2025. And now, for the last 3 months, or no, so for the last 4 months, all of a sudden, ETH has landed up outperforming Sol. And so, what am I looking at here? I'm putting it into perspective by looking at the phase in the cycle which we're currently in. The one thing we all can't deny is that right now, we are in the ETH phase of the cycle. We realized this was happening, and we quickly moved some of our profits, some of our Bitcoin, and some of our Sol into ETH. Right now, it is the ETH part of the cycle. Now, you've got to understand something about market cycles. So let's talk about a little bit about how market cycles perpetuate themselves. When market cycles perpetuate themselves, usually what it means is that there is favoritism towards one asset. and there is a share of attention which is moving to one asset, right? So if you think about the beginning of the market cycle, this cycle, it was a Bitcoin cycle. And I want to remind you that in that Bitcoin cycle, all eyes were on Bitcoin. All the activity was on Bitcoin. All the ETF flows were on Bitcoin. ETH could not catch a bid, right? Now, all of a sudden, you've got all eyes on ETH. And right now, when you compare the flows and the attention on ETH versus the attention on anything else, ETH has the share of attention. That is exactly what a market cycle is, right? There is an asset or a bunch of assets or a narrative that basically gets the bid. The price starts moving. As the price starts moving, everyone starts to flock to that specific asset. It happened to Sol in the beginning of the cycle, right? And then when that happened, what you saw is that no one was interested in Ethereum, right? No one was interested in ETH. In fact, at that part of the cycle, everyone was knocking down ETH and saying that ETH is the worst investment, it's completely dead, the fees on ETH are too expensive, it's too slow, ETH is imploding to zero, collapsing into Bitcoin's black hole because the share of attention was on Bitcoin. ETH is no longer a good bet. The casino is unlikely to regain dominance. Sol faces blah, blah, blah. People were talking about how bad ETH is and how bad ETH is. And that's everything happened until the one green candle. You got that one green candle, and all of a sudden, everybody wants ETH. And that's a pattern that I've seen very, very, very much in that's a pattern that I've seen very, very, very much in the cycle. I call it like the two green candles. All you need is two green candles, and the sentiment changes completely. I remember when I was speaking to one of our partners here, 𝗕𝗫𝗫, and he was talking to me about like the market and how bad it was and how boring it was and how hard it is to make content. I said to him, 𝗕𝗫𝗫, it's just two green candles, sir, and everything changes. The mood changes. People start coming back. People start trading. People start having fun, and we land up having fun at work, right? What I know about crypto cycles is that usually specifically when you talk about the big assets, when you talk about Bitcoin, when you talk about ETH, when you talk about Sol, when you talk about Avalanche, when you talk about the big assets, there is either a lot of love or there is a lot of hate, right? And that is how the market cycle perpetuates itself. When the market cycle was very much in this part of the cycle, which was Bitcoin, Bitcoin had all the love, all the inflows, all the attention, and ETH got all the hate, right? And to be honest, there was so much hate on ETH that at some point, I actually sold a lot of my ETH because I was like, listen, this chain doesn't work. It isn't going to recover. It's bad, etc., etc. But then when I saw the market sentiment turning, I was like, hold on, I'm not missing this ride. And I took a big leverage long position on ETH. You know, that's quite a public position. It got liquidated in February, but then I rebought it very quickly. And we carried on riding it, right? And so that's exactly what you need to understand about market cycles. Market cycles work because the attention goes from one asset to another. And when the price of the asset actually starts moving up, the narrative shifts accordingly. So it's not that the narrative shifts and then the price shifts. It's actually the other way around. First, the price shifts. Then the people look for the narrative to drive the price of the asset up. And so ETH went from being dead to having some green candles to being, oh my God, this is the best asset in the world. Institutions are building DeFi on ETH. ETH is the hub for all DeFi. I wonder if I actually got any tweets around that. I'm not sure if I have. No, I've only got the ones of ETH actually dying. But I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because you were here. First, the price moves. Then the narrative changes to support the price. When the price of an asset is going down, the narrative that the media publishers and the emotions and the people on Twitter and whatever, they start creating a narrative around the move in price and actually not the other way around. First, the charts move, then the narrative works with the charts. So you need to counter trade the narrative, right? Right now, the narrative is very, very, very much ETH. And I mean, no doubt, we are in the ETH part of the cycle. And as the narrative gets higher and higher and higher, as the narrative becomes more and more and more ETH, then the Sol narrative and the Bitcoin narrative will die down, and the Sol narrative is going to turn very, very, very salty. And you're seeing that now. People are starting to talk about Solana, about the meme coins. They're saying, look, the meme coins were a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it led to massive growth and use on the chain. On the other hand, it's got like it's lost this diehard community. It became a casino. The Sol maxis then became fartcoin maxis or pengu maxis or whatever else. Sol struck a nerve with the Sol community by pointing out the chain is essentially a meme coin super casino that makes all its revenue facilitating scams. That's the max hate, right? Solana survives solely on its meme coin ecosystem. Tons of liquidity, rug pull. Solana can't do anything about it, but it's a home for huge opportunity. At the same time, it's a massive scam chain. And so right now, the part of the cycle that we're in is all eyes on ETH and no eyes on Sol. And the same hate that ETH was getting in the early parts of the cycle is the same hate that Solana is getting right now. But I want to remind you something, right? When ETH was getting the majority of its hate, right? When ETH was getting the majority of its hate, if you look, and we looked on Twitter, when we looked at ETH and said, when was ETH getting the majority of its hate? It was around April. You can see this tweet was around April. This is January, so January it was already getting a lot of hate. March 28th, it was getting a lot of hate. Let's go look at what happened to the ETH chart around March, April this year. And for that, let's look at the BTC ETH chart. 21 April, by the way, is when the chart actually turned, right? The ETH BTC chart actually turned. If you look at the ETH USD chart, ETH USD chart, which is this chart over here, and you look at when the ETH USD chart bottomed, 7th of April is when the ETH USD chart started to bottom. Remember what I said to you. First, the price turns, and then the narrative changes. Look at when all these tweets actually happened. March 28th. The price hadn't turned. April, January 22nd, obviously the price hadn't turned. April 21, the price had just turned. March 30th, ETH is dying. Okay, the price turned. Straight after the price turned, Ethereum is dying in real time, April 21. But straight after the price turned, the narrative turned. And the narrative started to drive more and more people into ETH. And well, here we are on days where ETH is having much more share of attention, and therefore much more ETF flows. Because remember, one thing you got to take, one thing you can't take for granted is the fact that Wall Street are not smarter than us. They just have more money than us, right? And so when they read headlines, Tommy Lee on CNBC buying a whole lot of Bitcoin, ETH, raising 20 billion to buy ETH treasury companies. It's the same as what happened when Michael Saylor was announcing like a mad person that he was buying billion after billion after billion after billion of Bitcoin, right? Wall Street listened to this and said, we can't miss out on this train. And so what you're getting is you're now getting these insane ETF inflows. In fact, if you look at it on a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is quite complicated, but if you look on a relative basis of their market flows, and you say, what is the Bitcoin ETF inflows relative to the ETH inflows? ETH is outpacing Bitcoin by about 4-1 now. 4-1. This is an asset that you couldn't give away in April. So May, June, July. In 3 months, the entire narrative changed. I wish I could take you back to exactly how we felt in April, right? I wish we could all go back to how we felt in April. And ETH was dead. It was like the worst asset to be holding. We thought it would never, ever recover. Here we are 3 months later. It's like the blue-eyed darling of the cycle. It's ETH season. Anything to do with ETH is absolutely exploding. Guys, that should be everything that you need to know about Solana's next move. Why? Because it's not going to be different. Just change the name Sol with the name ETH. Remember the sentiment and all the hate that ETH got for being slow, being expensive, being extractive for the layer 2s, etc., etc. Same thing's happening on Solana right now. Exactly the same thing is happening on Solana right now. And right now, the narrative around Solana is bad. And I don't blame people for creating a bad narrative. Why? Because when you look at a chart that does this, well, let's go into the daily because the daily looks a lot more painful. It just can't catch a break. It just cannot catch a break. And the thing is, I actually don't think it's going to catch a break for a while. I think that Solana is going to carry on bleeding against ETH for a while. Now, I don't believe that Solana is going to crash while ETH carries on going up. So let's just get that into perspective here, right? I don't believe that Sol will crash and ETH will fly. I think that for a little bit of time, we're going to get a situation where ETH will fly, but Sol won't fly at all, or will fly much slower than ETH, right? And holding Sol has been quite a painful ride, right? I'll show you like an example. If you were holding Sol on the big crash in February, if you were holding Solana during the big crash in February when Trump announced tariffs, that was, when did Trump announce tariffs? Okay, let's go to the Sol chart first. So, and let's look at when Trump actually announced the tariffs. That was in February. So it's January, so it's somewhere around here. Sol was at about $180. It was about $180. I remember that. So it was like somewhere around there. There we go. And then we got like the massive tariff correction. Sol hasn't yet recovered to the levels here, and ETH is now 30% higher than it was at those levels. And so that is the massive pain that is being caused now by this actual move. The Sol people aren't complaining that Sol is at $175 or $180. The Sol people are complaining that for this part of the cycle, for the last 3 months, Sol hasn't moved as much as ETH has moved. That's the whole complaint here. So, I mean, again, we need to just get perspective. Perspective is that up until February this year, or even more, let's just go back to the Sol ETH chart. Here we go. So, up until this point over here, up until 21 April, not a single person complained about Solana. In fact, Solana was the best asset to hold this cycle until 3 months ago. And what happened 3 months ago? Well, it's not that the Solana price went down, because if you look at the 21st of April, let's just quickly get a Sol chart here. Sol USD. Let's move that chart over here so it's just easy to navigate. So if you look at the 21st of April, that is that's the 31st of April. So it's about here. Here. Okay. The Sol price was $156. And I mean, people weren't complaining. It was an amazing trade until then, right? But then ETH started to outperform Sol. So Sol is still up, but ETH is just up a whole lot more. So what do I think is going to happen from here? Let's talk about where we are in the cycle and what I think is going to happen from here. Okay, so let's talk about what actually happened. So I believe that this cycle is playing out the same as the previous cycles. And the data shows me exactly the same thing. So when I look at this cycle versus the previous cycles, I actually want to show this to you, right? So Ben Khan says, admittedly, there's a lot going on with this chart, but if you look carefully, you'll see that Bitcoin prints the same pattern every year. Every post-halving year. Up in July and August, down in September, up into the market cycle top. Okay? And we can see that if you look at the returns, I got some very good news here from 𝗕𝗫𝗫, who's our partner. He says we're building a hell of a machine. If only you guys knew what we're building out of that business. It's fucking insane what's going on there. Anyway, let's go back. I digress. ADD, I digress. Okay, so if we look at the market cycle return specifically for Bitcoin, and we look at the post-halving year, what we can see is in the post-halving year, usually July is green, August is green, and September is red. Same happened in 2017. July green, August green, September red. Very good end of year. This cycle over here, 2021, July green, August green, massive month in October. We had a green July. We're currently obviously having a green August. And so now what you can say is that if the cycle does follow, we should have some kind of correction, potentially somewhere around September, October. And if Ben's right, and to be honest, I mean, the guy's been right more than anybody else this cycle, could mean that we're going to get the markets actually going up from after the correction in September. What we also know is that when that happens, usually that's the last 3 months of the cycle. And if you look at the last 3 months of the cycle, what you know is that is when the market moves from Bitcoin and ETH to the last 3 months of the cycle. Last 3 months of the cycle, we're going to large cap alts and the small cap alts. I want to show it to you by looking at another chart. I want to show you total 3. And I want to show you when total 3, which removes Bitcoin and removes ETH, right, from the total market cap. And I want to show you when that one actually started. Let's maybe do total 3 divided by ETH. I think that's probably a good chart. Let's go divided by ETH USD. That'll probably show us a good chart. And let's see if we can get that chart. So let's look at when in the last part of the cycle, if you look at the last part of the cycle, hold on, so 2021, and you want to go towards the end of 2021, somewhere over here, you see, that is when you get the outperformance of the outperformance of that part of the cycle. And so what we know is in the last part of the cycle, the smaller altcoins start outperforming ETH. And I think that when I look at all of the charts, that's exactly what's happening, and that is exactly when Solana is going to run. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. I think for now, we could have some more bleed between ETH and Sol. So if I look at the Sol ETH chart, and I look at where we are in the Sol ETH chart, that's where we are in the Sol ETH chart. And there's not many levels. Like this is a tiny support level over here. right? Which is kind of like exactly where we are now. There's a support level here. But if we break down below this support level, on the 𝗨/𝗏 chart, there's probably another 14% downside, not on 𝗨, but on 𝗨 relative to 𝗏, right? So what you can see here is you can see that the levels here, that there's a very big support resistance level over here. And we can expect that the next stop, if 𝗨 doesn't hold here, is that 𝗨 is going to go down to this level, and 𝗏 is going to outperform 𝗨 by about 14%. And you can see that both on market cap and on actual prices, and it's kind of talking about a 14 to 19% relative dip. Now, again, that doesn't mean that 𝗨 is going to dip 19% while 𝗏 stays still. It means that 𝗏 is going to outperform 𝗨 by 19%. So if 𝗏 goes up from here 20%, it just means that 𝗨 will go up less than 20%. That's pretty much what it means, okay? And the same thing actually gets confirmed when we look at total 3, which is total 3 divided by 𝗏, which is a chart that we looked at a second ago. Where did I put that chart? Total 3 divided by 𝗏. Okay, you saw that chart. I think I showed you what that chart shows. What that chart basically shows us is that there's probably a little bit more downside for the alts against 𝗏, which is exactly what 𝗏𝗀𝗏 said. He said, right now it's 𝗏 season, it's not alt season. Right now it's pretty much 𝗏 season. But when you look at the 𝗨/BTC chart and you say, okay, let's look at the last cycle. From the last cycle, from the top to the bottom, which ended in a double bottom, was 79 weeks. Here we've had 73 weeks and we've just had a double bottom, right? So one could assume that somewhere around here, 𝗨/𝗏 bounces, right? Now, why would 𝗨/𝗏 bounce? Sorry, 𝗨 Bitcoin bounces. And yet still, 𝗨 underperforms 𝗏. Why? Because we also assume that 𝗏 is going to outperform Bitcoin. So we could maybe assume that when you look at the 𝗨/BTC chart, that 𝗨/BTC chart has already bottomed and is probably going to continue on this line until we maybe get a high. And the question is whether it's going to be a higher high or a lower high, but ultimately that's going to start retracing, right? So that looks like that chart may have bottomed or may be in the process of actually bottoming. If there is some more downside, there's not much more downside when it comes to the 𝗨/BTC chart, because the next resistance levels are over here, which are like not much more than here, maybe 10 or 15% down relative to Bitcoin. And so I think what's going to land up happening is that for now, we must just let 𝗏 have its time in the sun. We are exposed to 𝗏. We are exposed to the 𝗏/betas. But I think that this cycle plays out just like every other cycle. And if it does, towards the end of the year, the alts actually start performing much quicker or much better than 𝗏 or the majors, right? And when that happens, the first beneficiary of that is going to be Solana. And so, whereas right now, the narrative of Solana is very bearish and it's a meme coin chain and whatever else, guys, that changes in less than a month. How quickly did it change on 𝗏, right? And so what is my strategy? And my strategy is a very, very, very simple strategy. I kind of believe that towards the end of the year, October, November, there's going to be SOL ETF approvals. I don't believe this blindly, but that's when the SEC's deadlines for approving the SOL ETFs are. So I believe sometime towards the end of the year, we're going to get a real SOL ETF. Also, what we know is that right now, if you want a consumer-facing app, SOL is ultimately right now the king of consumer-facing blockchain apps, right? It's a race between Base and SOL. I did a show the other day where I compared the metrics between Base and SOL, and congratulations to Base and Coinbase and everything they're doing, but ultimately they're about 1/10 of the size of Solana as it currently stands. Also, if I look at all the app revenue that is being generated, right now, Solana is the master of app revenue generations, right? So if you want to build an app and you want to generate fees, specifically fees that come out of consumer, well, Solana is basically where you want to be doing it, right? And it's not only meme coins, okay? There's a lot going on. Number one, Solana is becoming much, much, much quicker and is by far the most reliable, quick layer one, right? That's where it is at the moment. They've got X stocks. X stocks have hit $2 billion. Those are tokenized stocks. They've hit $2 billion worth of trade volume on Solana. Also, if you read between the lines here, Brian Armstrong said that the Coinbase app is also soon going to be integrating Solana dexes, right? So all the upgrades that they did where Aerodrome started to benefit, he's basically telling you, just look, Brian Armstrong just basically told you to buy Raydium. He basically told you to buy Raydium. Why? Because remember what happened to Aerodrome when Brian Armstrong told us that they were going to integrate DEXs? Well, he's pretty much said to you guys, support for Solana. We are starting to roll out DEX trading for US, excluding New York customers. Our goal is to make Coinbase the simplest way to access on-chain markets. You'll be able to trade millions of base assets in the Coinbase app. And then the founder of Solana said, hold on, he said Solana. He basically said Raydium. He didn't say Solana, he said Raydium, but Raydium on Solana. And so I think that what we need to remember is, look, if you want to dump your SOL bags now, you can. Generally, I like to dump assets when they are in their peak. And unless I see something completely fundamentally wrong, I don't really like to sell assets when they're going down. That would be the same as actually selling ETH when everyone was fighting and hating ETH. You got to appreciate from someone or from people that have been here for multiple cycles that this is how the cycle plays out. And that when one asset actually catches a bid, the other asset suffers. And when it does, the narrative shifts towards the asset with the bid and away from the one that actually suffers. People start to talk up the asset to justify why the price is going up on the one asset, and they start to justify why the price isn't going up on the other asset. So what is the best play right now? Look, you need to have a diversified portfolio with ETH and SOL and DeFi plays. I definitely wouldn't be selling my Solana. In fact, if anything, and you want to be smart and you want to play the cycle like you're supposed to play the cycle, at some point now, you're going to start exiting your ETH play slowly, and you're going to start shifting that money into what you believe is going to be the next part of the cycle, right? And that is when we're going to start shifting into Solana plays. Now, you can decide to wait for it to actually happen, or you can decide to take a view and say, look, there's about this much left on the Sol ETH chart, and probably we hope that this is the last chance, because if not, then it goes like really fucking low, and it could even go down to here. Right now, my view is, given the market cycle, that it kind of ends in October, and so we go with a pattern that looks something like this. It's like this. Sorry, I'm trying to draw on a very sensitive mouse, and somewhere around here it bottoms in October, and then bang, it starts to bounce up, and then the question is, how high does it actually bounce up? I'm going to leave that drawing here so we can always refer back to it, just like I referred to this as the point of max FUD, and then Sol went up here. I don't think we're at the point of max FUD yet, but I do believe that a lot of FUD has actually landed up happening, and that I understand the market cycles. I said the same thing to you around pump fun. When pump was going down and everyone said, like, it's the worst token to hold, and it's finished, and it's a rug, and they started saying that Alon went into Jewish mode and whatever else. I said, guys, we're buying this thing. We landed up buying this thing at 0.25. It's not 0.36. It's been one of my best trades of the cycle. Generally, I know ETH has run, and ETH has had a good run. I think Solana will be next. That's my thesis, and I'm pretty much going to stick to it, right? Which means that at some point, I'm going to start taking profits from my Solana, my ETH plays, and putting it into Solana plays. I'm going to put it into things like Solana, into things like Jupiter, into things like Jito, into things like Raydium, because I know that those things are going to have a run. It's not the popular view now, but it also wasn't the popular view in March or April to be buying ETH. And those that did landed up making life-changing and even wife-changing money. Those that didn't are now chasing. They're now chasing the ETH bid. Only thing is that ETH has already doubled since then. So that is, I know it's not what you want to hear. And I know you want me to say, rah, dump your Solana and jump onto the hype, the hype. I'm saying here, and I know that, my content lives on YouTube forever. So if I'm wrong, I know that you'll remind me of this forever and ever and ever, right? I'm saying that somewhere between here and here, the market's going to bottom. And I'm saying that you've already written all of this here. And this doesn't mean that the SOL price is going to drop by 20%. It just means that it's going to underperform ETH by a maximum of about 20%. And then after that, I think it's all the way up. And then we go from here to Valhalla. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the thesis. Let me know what you're doing with your SOL. Let me know what you guys are doing with your SOL. Couple of announcements that I want to make while you guys are telling me in the chat. The first thing is, if you're trading on BitGet, there's a massive competition that actually is starting today. I think it's starting today. Is it today? There's a competition. It's their big competition. $6 million up for grabs in the promotion pool. So if you guys are trading on BitGet, that's probably a good one to be going. I had a look at our bots. I want to spend 5 minutes talking about the bots. So first of all, the good news is that most of our grid bots are actually doing fantastically well. We smashed it. The only one that's down a little bit is the Pengu one, because we got in, it's slightly higher than the price that we at now. We got in at 38 and it's at 36, right? But remember, we're still making money because this thing's trading in the grid. Remember, if you want to copy my bots, or if you want to sign up and get $1,000 deposit bonus, then you go to the bottom of the show. Let me just refresh that so you can actually go there. You go to the bottom of the show. All the links for all the bots are actually here at the bottom of the show. Here we go. There we go. You guys can see it. And if you sign up, you guys will actually get. Just tell Johnny to put the 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 trading bots and the links there. All right. I want to also talk about the other bots, because remember, we also got into the other bots. So right now, I've been in both. I've been in the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 bot and I've been in the 𝗏𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗏 bot. Right. So I'm in both bots with you guys. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 bot is pretty much on break even. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 bot, he went down quite a bit. At one point I was down like $10,000, and he's actually clawing up his losses. Now, these bots have been not as successful as the grid bots. Like the majority of the bots, the grid bots have actually been way better performers, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm actually giving this bot a chance. I'm giving this trading bot a chance to actually get us up close to where we started, and then I'm going to revalue it, right? So right now I'm not chucking more money at this bot. I just wanted this bot to get me back the returns. I trust the bot. I've seen the algos, it works. But right now, in the last 2 weeks, it hasn't had very good results. In the last 3 weeks, or 3 weeks before, they had very good results. And then it had 2 bad weeks. So I'm holding on. And if you're in there, I think you should do the same. Meanwhile, I'm doubling down on these bots, which we'll add into the description. Remember also, if you start depositing money on 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and start doing the bots, I'm going to be giving away an account with $5,000 worth of bots that we actually invest. I'm not investing that $5,000 now because I just don't think that there's a range where I'm comfortable actually deploying money. But as soon as there is one, I'm going to be the first guy, and I'm going to go all in when that actually happens. All right, let's quickly just look at the market one more time. Okay, the markets have pulled back slightly since CPI. Pump Fund is still doing well. ETH is still at like 4,400. Bitcoin is at 119,000. I guess the market was expecting the CPI results. It got what it expected. Now we just wait for Powell. What do you say? Powell, it's over to you. So the mic's yours. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, trade well, my friends.